Greetings, good people. Did you see the news? We're going back to the moon. That's right, we're going back to the moon today on April Fool's Day of 2026. Well, that's if you believe that kind of thing. I, for one, certainly do not. In fact, not only do I not believe in the moon landing, but I don't believe it's even possible. And did you know that today is the 66th anniversary of the first ever photograph of the globe Earth, which was also published by NASA, also on April Fool's Day. Now, why do they do this kind of thing on Fool's Day? Well, firstly, it's because they are actually fooling the public. But secondly, there's a kind of plausible deniability, so that if they get completely exposed for their shenanigans in the future, they can always say, "It was just a joke." So, anyway, they're going to pretend to send people to the moon today, and we can all watch the show and have a good laugh. Now, I thought I would do a video on the subject of gravity, because I get a lot of questions about gravity, and it really is the linchpin that holds this entire fake view of the cosmos together. So, I've tried to really break it down and help you understand why gravity is not a real thing, it's just a theory, and it doesn't actually apply to reality, and what this means for our understanding of the universe. So I hope you enjoy, and let me know what you think. Apples may fall, but gravity is not real. Let me explain. So we know from experience that falling objects are accelerated towards the ground. It's an undeniable phenomenon, something we can all observe and verify. Everyone knows it, nobody is denying it. So when we hear gravity is not real, it sounds preposterous, provocative, and even paradoxical. Furthermore, it completely contradicts the proclamations of physicists who have the dubious distinction of being chief among the intellectual elite and have been drilling the theory of gravity into the minds of the populace for hundreds of years. To break down this problem, we must first disentangle the real effect of falling objects from the hypothetical cause of the force of gravity. There are other possible causes for falling bodies, which I will get to. Newton's revolutionary idea was that physical objects exert an attractive force on other physical objects by virtue of their mass. So unlike magnetism, which is electrical with a selective short range of action, gravity is said to be non-electric, long range, attracting all matter unto itself, regardless of whether it's charged, metallic, crystalline, solid, liquid, or gas. Newton postulated that the strength of the gravitational force between two objects was proportional to the mass of the objects and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. So as the mass increases, the force increases. And as the distance between the objects gets closer, the force increases exponentially. It's important to understand that the equation is an expression of this hypothesis in symbolic form, but it bears no relation to reality. Yes, objects do indeed fall when released from a height, but no, there is not a long-range force that causes all matter to pull together over vast distances. This kind of force has been called magical action at a distance, as it is something like telekinesis, and was of particular interest to Isaac Newton, who was apparently a magician himself. John Maynard Keynes, who purchased Newton's private papers, discovered that he had written far more on the subject of alchemy and theology than on physics or maths combined. He went on to describe Newton as the last magician. Ironically, Newton's obsession with physical attraction did not seem to translate to his love life. He was never seen with a woman in all his days, produced no children, and so was also the last of his bloodline. But if the theory of gravity were true, if mass attracted mass universally, then there should be measurable acceleration in the horizontal direction, not only the vertical. We would expect balls to roll towards each other and cluster together. Mountains and large buildings should generate a significant attractive force and draw objects toward them. We should feel a pull in our flesh every time we walk past a dense object, but we don't. Yet we are told that it must be true because it was proven long ago by the Cavendish experiment in 1797. From the tiny movements of a highly sensitive apparatus in a sealed room, it was deduced that all the matter in the cosmos is governed by mutual attraction. It is perhaps the most assumption-laden experiment in the history of natural philosophy. The hubris and credulity is off the scale. It appears to have been set up specifically to confirm Newton's hypothesis. We would be foolish to accept the theory of gravity based on the behavior of this one janky contraption from 1797. There are many other explanations for why the apparatus may have moved. Air currents, temperature differentials, body heat, mechanical stress, or any number of other reasons. It is a hasty generalization and glaring confirmation bias to attribute such motion to Newton's theory of gravity. Ultimately, if gravity were real, we would expect all the solid, liquid, and gas in the universe to be drawn towards the most dense point, where the force would get stronger and more concentrated with each and every new particle that it draws in. Taken to its inevitable conclusion, the whole universe would be squashed together into a pulp, and the force would increase all the way to infinity, compressing everything into oblivion forever. This quantitative quandary is the mathematical condition known as the black hole, a fictional state of matter that occurs in the minds of physicists when their denominators go to zero. You see, this is where the theory breaks down. If two objects are touching each other, then the distance between them, r, goes to zero, and the force must go to infinity. Now, a rational mind would consider this a red flag, pointing to a serious issue, flaw, or limitation within the foundational assumptions. But physicists, well acquainted with making stuff up, have developed ways to normalize infinities. Wait until you see quantum field theory. And so instead of calling it a problem, they call it a prediction. Newton predicts the existence of a force governed by his equation. Then the equation predicts the existence of black holes. Now, we all have to believe in black holes, got it? The equation predicted it, so it must be true. It's not only a theory, they tell us, it's a law. And with that, the law of gravity has been used to make extremely wide-ranging claims and predictions about the whole entire cosmos. It is the linchpin for the heliocentric model of the solar system, in which Earth and water is said to be a ball of radius 3,959 miles, spinning at 1,040 miles per hour, and orbiting the Sun at 66,616 miles per hour through the infinite, absolute zero, freezing cold vacuum of outer space. Not only that, but the stated distances to stars and planets, their alleged masses and sizes, are all calculated on the basis of this equation. That means that the entire model of the cosmos, taught to us at school and depicted in sci-fi, from the spinning globe Earth to the expanse of outer space, from the Big Bang to the Big Crunch, is a mathematically contrived fantasy that rests on the singular faulty premise of universal gravitation. Einstein didn't fix it either. He only generalized it and complicated it further, reframing the force in terms of bendy space-time, making way for even more absurd and far-reaching claims which became the foundation stone of 20th century physics. Einstein means first stone. The three biggest names in gravity are Newton, Einstein, and Hawking. We can hardly even talk of gravity without mentioning their names. And they also happen to be the most artificially boosted science celebrities in all of human history. We are practically brainwashed into worshipping them as bastions of intellectual achievement, the most important contributors to human progress and enlightenment. But they are far from it. Now, Stephen Hawking, or Epstein's favourite cripple, is a rabbit hole unto himself. I have a chapter of my book dedicated to him, and I would refer you to that. But I will just say that the Hawking operation should be a real wake-up call for all those who worship at the altar of scientism, especially physicists. It is a travesty and a mockery that shows how deeply hypnotized, gullible, and foolish we all were, worshipping false idols on the TV and believing in totally unproven sci-fi nonsense such as gravity, black holes, and bendy space-time. The awakened physicists should be radicalized by this revelation and ready to tear up the last few centuries of state-sanctioned science. But maybe it's just me. The case against gravity doesn't even stop there, though. Why did this obscure, unproven theory become so widely disseminated in public education long after Newton had departed the world stage? Was it just to prop up heliocentrism in the globe model of Earth, or could there have been a deeper conspiracy? Underlying the agenda for new paradigms in physics lies a centuries-old hidden motivation to cover up some of the most ancient, empowering, and essential truths of our existence. I suspect that gravity, like its successor relativity, is ultimately all about eliminating the ether from the canon of scientific knowledge. So the last magician was also the first ether slayer. You see, there is another explanation for why objects fall to the ground, one that doesn't require magical action at a distance, one that doesn't predict black holes or rely on the tiny movements of an 18th century contraption, one that is intuitive and experimentally verifiable and known to ancient alchemists long before the age of the so-called Enlightenment. All that is required to explain downward motion is the concept of a medium. Ether is the medium, and science has been determined to erase it. We live in a fluid medium, like the fishes that do not know they're in water. We observe objects fall, and we attribute it to a magical force invented long ago by some big fish that we learned about in school. But nobody tells us about the medium, the substrate, the source. It's been cut out of scientific education altogether, like God, like spirit and soul, cast into the dustbin of history as primitive superstition and folly. So gravity hides ether because ether is the real reason why things fall. It can be understood as an omnipresent fluid of very, very low viscosity, in which there are persistent currents and vortices, channels of energy like invisible rivers in the sky, flowing all the time around us and within us. There are two main vertical currents happening at all times. One flows from the heavens down into the earth, and one from the earth up into the heavens. As above, so below. The earth is said to be negatively charged. Negative is feminine, like Mother Earth, and inward flowing, so it draws the ether down into itself. This results in the denser elements of earth and water being drawn down, while the lighter elements of fire and air are drawn up. So the substances that fall are the feminine elements, earth and water, flowing downstream back to the Mother Earth, and the substances that rise are the masculine elements, air and fire, flowing upstream, back to Father Sky. There is no mysterious attractive force called gravity causing particles to pull on particles through an infinite freezing vacuum, but there are currents of various frequencies and sizes flowing in the universal medium of the ether. Earth is the fixed, stationary expression of ether. Everything else, the water, air and fire, the clouds, the stars and the planets are in constant vortex motion above and around the stationary Earth. This is the geocentric reality in which we live, the plane of existence, the plane of inertia. As above, so below, as within, so without. Welcome to the vortex.